Good evening. Welcome to Community and Technology, where we connect the global community with news, information, and resources to hopefully help improve your life. I'm Stu Reid. Here's my co-host, Dave Burstein. Hey, Dave.
Hello.
And today we have a special guest who's going to talk to us about an interesting application that he's developed. We have Mr. Armen Arustamov, who has an app called the Gotit app, which is an internal dialogue mental app that helps users overcome their mental challenges in COVID time, allowing them to talk to oneself like another person to get insights that they have not received before. That sounds really interesting, Armen. Tell us about that application. What is that?
Yeah. Hello, friends. Thank you for your invitation. We're glad to see you here to be here. This application, this is an internal dialogue application, which allows users talk to oneself like another person, with especially two secret sauces, with modified voice, which allows you distance from oneself, and role-changing or role-playing game, where you're changing your roles like a mentor and mentee, and asking your questions and answer all these questions on your own. And when we tested this mental techniques among the 80 mental techniques, that's mental technique like internal dialogue was one of the most demanded mental technique from 80 tested among the student athletes. Young people don't want to share their personal information with somebody, even if this somebody is professional, psychologist or someone. They want to solve their mental challenges by their own, but with special tool. And we try to build this special tool.
So how does it work? Break it down for us. How does it actually work, Armen?
It's very simple. You know, I can show you. You can download this app in the App Store right now, like putting in the search, like just internal dialogue, and that's it, or self-talk. And it's worked like I'm very nervous before the match. What should I do before the sports match? You know, boom, record. And then I'm listening to this guy with modified voice. I'm very nervous before the match. What should I do? And then I got some instructions that I can to communicate with him only with help questions. Okay, and I think, what did you already try to overcome your feeling? Boom, record. And then I'm listening. What did you already try to overcome it? Okay, I'm trying to stay alone before the match. That's unused, etc. Boom, record. So you're asking and answer, and then in the end, you can listening to whole your internal dialogue from third observer role. Okay. Sounds like this.
Okay, so how effective has it been? Do you have any kind of tests or trials, or how do we know that it works? Does it work?
Yeah, we're testing this all the time. We tested this app with more 1,000 athletes from 12 to 20. It's tennis players, soccer players, football players, different guys, and they like it. But in the one moment, they don't know what should they ask. You know, they cannot create the question for themselves. And in this case, we created the special guide, and this guide gives you some pop-up hints, like samples of questions or advices how you should ask and answer effectively. For example, ask only open-ended questions, or answer only what you feel, not what you think. You know. And
so I mean, essentially, you're asking people to be their own psychologists in terms of how the app works. Is that, am I understanding it correctly?
Yes, like something like this. Yeah, we teach people how to be their own mental coach, how to act their own mental coach.
Mm-hmm.
It's not replacing the coach, the professionals. It's not replacing, but it's the great chance to be close to this.
I think Dave has a question. Dave?
Yeah, take a minute and describe what it's like for a user when they begin with your app. What do they go through? What should they be thinking about?
It's always different. It depends on user, you know. And but the main problems of the users, I don't want nothing. This social isolation, because of this social isolation, I'm stay alone every day like a previous one. And with this problem, they come.
How much of what you put in the app comes from your own experience? You're an athlete, I believe.
Yeah, right now we have around 600 downloads and around 15 active users every day, daily. But in our marketing strategy, it's a B2B. We have right now 3 letters of intent or preliminary agreements with 3 huge health and sports platform. I can call them. It's a Healand. It's a 3 million healthcare platform, Healand. It's Connected Mind. It's a psychodiagnostic platform from Texas, Austin. And they want to split their psychodiagnostic approach and our development approach. And this is a County Sports Zone from Maryland. It's a Maryland marketplace for student athletes.
Now, a key question, of course, is how well this works. And let me ask you 2 things about that. First, if somebody wanted to try the application, where do they go? What do you offer for a trial?
Yeah. Right now, our app is totally free for everyone. You can go to the App Store, put the internal dialogue, download the app, and just using it for free. And then we're going to turn on the subscription after maybe 3 weeks. We will test it. We will testing it. It's for B2B. It is for B2C. It's for just regular people. For B2B, we're going to provide this app for free also. And after maybe 1 month, when they want to customize this app for their needs, we will charge money from that.
And the difficult question: how can you persuade people that doing this kind of thing over the internet with an app is going to make a difference in their life and how they performed?
Actually, we're not going to persuade them. I think when we see that, it's a natural need of the people to talk to oneself. It's like it happens organically, but we create some tool which verbalize and digitize your internal dialogue. Yeah, the young people need it. The just senior people, majority of senior people don't need it, but they have their internal dialogue. But I'm not sure that the senior people will use this app because there is no habits to use this stuff for their internal dialogue, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But young people.
Stu, should we get the information out about how people
Armen, give us the name of the app again and how folks can sign up for the free trial.
Sorry, I didn't understand the question. Could you repeat?
The name of the app.
Yeah.
And so folks can download it. And how do they sign up for the free trial?
Oh, yeah, sure. They can go to the App Store, put in the search line like internal dialogue or Gotit or Gotit app.
Gotit, got it.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And they find us. They find us. like a purple square.
Okay, well, we're going to check that out. Armen, I want to thank you for coming on our show and sharing a really interesting application with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. We've been talking with Armen Arustamov about his application, Gotit, internal dialogue application that helps solve problems. Thanks, Armen.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Good day.
Should we give our disclosures now, Stu?
Yes, go ahead, Dave, please.
Okay, of course, I have opinions. I have a strong bias. My job as a reporter and a presenter here is to overcome that bias and get as close to the truth as I can. But I should let people know what my bias is. So I made an endorsement today that won't interest many of our viewers, but was big for me. At the ITU, international standards are set by an organization called ITUT. Seizu Ono would like to be the next director. It's an international election. Countries will be voting over the next year. And I want to strongly endorse Ono. I've known him for 8 years as one of the best technologists or most respected technologists building networks anywhere on Earth. He's been in charge of NTT Docomo, the huge mobile network at CTO, and it's been one of the most innovative networks anywhere. It was one of the first to 4G way back when, and he helped define the standard. He's been in the middle of all the discussions about 5G, and his common sense approach is far beyond most of what you read and almost any of the pundits. NTT Docomo was a pioneer in building applications for mobile, even before we knew about applications for mobile. They did many of the things that we now do on iPhones and smartphones before there was an iPhone. He's been generous with me and with everybody else I know in helping to explain the technology. He's been active in standards. Docomo has been a worldwide leader in reducing energy use in telecom, which is an important part of any new standard. So, listeners should know that I'm strongly endorsing him, and I have a bias. Someone I know, Gail Brewer, here in New York, is going for the speaker of the city council. I think you know her better than I do, Stu. Why don't you talk about what her benefits are?
Well, Gail Brewer is someone that I greatly admire. I met her more than 10 years ago. It had to be maybe even 15 years ago when she was a representative on the city council from the Upper West Side. And she started something called the Technology Committee at the city council, which looked at technology issues and in particular looked at the digital divide and internet access issues. This is going back at least 15 years. And she was a very early advocate for bringing access to underserved folks in low-income communities. She supported a lot of the work that my group did, Digital Divide Partners and Urban Communications, and myself, my business partner, Doug Frazier, she's been a big advocate. She's also supported the work that we've done in emergency communications with our WHCR emergency broadcast team, where we have, ever since Hurricane Sandy, I guess in 2012, I believe it was, we've had an annual emergency preparedness get together, if you will. We missed the last 2 years because of the pandemic, but Gail has been a keynote speaker at several of those and has been a big advocate of bringing technology to help solve some of the emergency preparedness issues like emergency communications. So she's someone that really understands the technology space. And she is also someone that has her feet on the ground, that's as you know, when I've kind of walked around with her at various public housing developments and various events as well, and she is on a first name basis with so many people, and likewise people on a first name basis with her. It's not Miss Brewer, it's not Council Person Brewer, it's not even Manhattan Borough President Brewer. It's Gail. That's who she is to people. And she has, in my mind, she is a true servant of the people, unlike most politicians, which generally, between you and I, Dave, I don't have a lot of respect for many politicians because they are, it seems as though their interests come first. The folks that support them economically come first, and the constituents, the little guys on the ground, are kind of like bringing up the rear. Not the case with Gail Brewer. So I'm very excited that she is running for the city council speaker. I believe is that an appointment or is that an elected position?
I
Dave?
believe the council members vote, but I haven't looked, so I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I know
she's a real
Gail.
champion of the people.
I've met Gail a number of times because she's always there on progressive issues. I should say that I went up to the Bronx for where she was speaking about broadband. This is years ago. And she said, New York City is going to have Wi-Fi everywhere. And this is one of the reasons why I'll let Stu do the talking, because we don't have Wi-Fi everywhere. The program barely got off the ground, and I wanted more because it's a good idea, and it's a. I should mention that I endorse strongly Jessica Rosenworcel, who has just been confirmed as chairman of the FCC.
Oh, has she? I didn't know that, Dave.
Just came down this afternoon.
Okay. Breaking news.
Yeah. I endorsed her the first time in 2008 when Obama got elected. And before he took office, I talked about potential candidates for the FCC. I believe I was the first to endorse her. But as I say, my job is to come as close to the truth as I can. She has totally wasted much of the money in the $3 billion emergency broadband benefit program that she led as acting chair of the FCC. The main goal was to connect people who weren't connected. She would talk about the kids who had to go to the McDonald's parking lot to do their homework because they didn't have a connection at home. In fact, I doubt even 10% of the money was spent on connecting the unconnected. It instead went to big $50 a month subsidies, far more than necessary, to the giant companies, much of which for people who were already connected and would have continued to be connected. How this went wrong? I don't want to bore the listeners with the detail, but that's always the question you have to ask on any policy. Yes, it is good to connect children. No, it is not good to give out what amounts to corporate welfare of half the money you budget for that. And that came up again in one I sent to Stu just before the show, the CHIPS Act. You want to, before the break, shall we talk about what that is? Or
Yes,
should we
please.
talk
Dave,
about hate speech?
I would like to talk about that. That was a new issue to me. Apparently, the Senate just approved $52 billion to fund this act that presumably or purportedly is going to help get the U.S. competitive in the chip industry. Dave, tell us about that bill and your evaluation of it.
Yeah. Gina Raimondi, the Secretary of Commerce, who I haven't had occasion to meet yet. I haven't been going down to Washington much the last 12 years. Because it's really painful to see good people, and I'm sure she's one of them, who get it all wrong and don't take care of business. I saw that in Jessica on how she handled emergency broadband benefit and how she's not handling the waste in universal service in E-rate. And Ms. Ramundi made a ridiculous speech saying that if we want to solve the chip shortage, we must spend $50 billion on subsidy to chip companies. Well, that would make sense, but she didn't ask the other question. Would the $50 billion actually result in more chips? Or will it just go to the bottom line of the companies? And I'm almost sure that the money will not have much impact on the American ability to make chips. None of the companies involved that make chips and have been supporting this. We're talking about Intel, Samsung, TSMC, IBM, have said they will raise their actual spending on building chip factories because if they get to $50 billion. And I assure you, if that was where the money was going to go, they'd be out there saying they'd be creating thousands of jobs. Now, one of the reasons is that these companies, not IBM, but the other three, are really expanding as fast as they can at any reasonable cost. Samsung has budgeted $100 billion for chip manufacturing to stay ahead. TSMC is building a $17 billion plant in, I think it's Arizona or New Mexico. Samsung is building a $17 or $25 billion plant near Austin, Texas. Intel has put another $20 billion into their investment budget the next 3 years, building in the US, Israel, and Europe.
Put this in context for us, Dave. I mean, where is the U.S. globally? We are nowhere near the leader as we used to be a couple decades ago. Is that right?
Well, the two most advanced chip makers in the world are TSMC in Taiwan Semiconductor, and Samsung in Korea.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them have been investing tens of billions of dollars every year to make the incredible chips that, for example, are in every 5G phone you can buy. They're the only two plants in the world that can make them. The equipment for that 5G phone plant mostly comes, and the most important piece, from ASML in the Netherlands. Mm-hmm. The US has a very small role in all of this.
So what will the $50 billion bill do, or what are they saying that it will do to change that landscape?
Well, they're saying it's going to result in the US pulling ahead in chips or catching up.
Mm-hmm.
But a superb editorial by Alan Patterson in Electronic Engineering Times points out that the tech companies lobbying for the act have squandered past support from the US government, while instead showing more appetite for share buybacks to boost company stock prices.
Wow.
Intel, IBM, Qualcomm, Texas Instruments, and Broadcom, biggest US chip manufacturers, did a combined $249 billion in buybacks in the last decade, according to Bill Lazanik, an economist at the University of Massachusetts. So that's where companies tend to put windfall money, or any money they get that they don't need to spend. And that's exactly, here we go, again, from Patterson. Intel lags behind TSMC and Samsung in process technologies. They're third in the world. They're extraordinary by most standards, but they've been 2 years late on their latest generation. In part because of the swing towards buybacks. Intel spent $50 billion on capital expenditures and $53 billion in R&D, perfectly ordinary during 5 years. That's what, $20 billion a year, not terribly high spending for a $200 billion company. But it also spent $35 billion buying back stocks. That would have bought enough to equip 4 state-of-the-art factories. Next generation, their factories are more expensive, so it only might buy 2. Now, where's the money going to go of this $50 billion? It's going to go to these same companies. There's nobody else who builds chips in the companies we're talking about here. Some of it will go to research at universities, so on. That's a good thing. And the US has the most advanced researchers in most of wireless. Tom Marzetta and Ted Rappaport at NYU, Paul Raj at Stanford and so on, are the best of the best. But most of the money will go to the companies, and not one of them has indicated they will spend more because they get all this US government money.
So Dave, let me just be clear. It sounds like that companies like Intel and the other US companies are more interested in padding their bottom line than they are in gaining more market share. I mean, which seems a little unusual. Maybe they just can't gain the market share. What's going on there?
I wish it were unusual, but that's one of the reasons the US has fallen behind in so much. Corporations are there to make money for their shareholders. That's what most people believe, and that's the common wisdom. In fact, if you think back, corporations were also expected to help the economy do well by their country. US corporations have not been patriotic. They put their shareholders ahead of what the country needs. If you go to buy a car today, you're going to be shocked at how hard it is to get a discount and how you can't even get many models right now without a wait of months. There really is a chip shortage. We needed more capacity. The chip shortage is partly because once there started to be a shortage, every company in the world bought up as much inventory as they can, and that made a really severe shortage. And it's so shortage that Detroit and other automakers around the world have been shutting down factories. So there's lots of good reasons to get more capacity for building chips. But the question that Raimondi hasn't answered and can't is whether most of this $50 billion actually will go into more capacity or just prop up the dividend in Intel. What do you think is more likely the way America is based?
Unfortunately, I would say the latter. Propping up their dividend is, what we have seen. Unfortunately, I think it's the consumers that are suffering from the chip shortage in the auto industry and other industries, and it seems as though the manufacturers they're okay. They're just kind of rolling with the punches on the supply chain shortages.
The manufacturers on chips, seeing the demand, Global Foundries, a big chip maker, is sold out for the next 3 years, literally. They've sold all their capacity in advance because companies like automakers wanted that capacity and paid whatever it took. Are increasing capacity about as fast as they can. Intel, Samsung, and TSMC have budgeted well over $200 billion in investment. That's increased by at least a third over what I would have said a year ago. Their chip factories take 2 to 4 years to build. The equipment to go into chip factories now is also sold out in many items for a couple of years. So you couldn't increase capacity very much. It will take, capacity is now going up so fast. Patterson, in a separate article, worried about whether in a year or two, there'll be massive overcapacity and the chip foundries won't be able to sell all they can make. That's a really hard call. I don't know how it's going, but giving $50 billion in subsidies as incentives is frankly pure BS unless it actually results in more capacity. But I think we have to do a station ID now.
Yeah, Okay, this is WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. And I want to bring a special season's greetings from WHCR 90.3 FM. We hope all is well with you and your family in these challenging times. During the holiday season, many people look for ways to combine their desire to help causes they believe in with their desire to save on taxes. WHCR is a cause you can believe in. Since 2020, we have kept you updated on all things related to COVID-19, like business and school closures, MTA schedule changes, and alternate side parking rules. Most importantly, we've kept you updated on rent relief, financial assistance, and food support programs. And to give you a break from all the stress, our DJs have brought you some of the best music you won't hear on any other station without a bunch of commercial interruptions. And of course, Community and Technology, our show, has helped keep you abreast of the latest tech developments and how they impact your lives. But we can only do this with your support. So please make a tax-deductible donation to WHCR 90.3 FM by December 31st, 2021. Please mail a check or money order to WHCR City College, 160 Convent Avenue, NAC 1/513. That's NAC 1/513, New York, New York, 10031. And please write Community and Technology in the memo line. We thank you for your support. We're going to take a brief musical break, and we're going to be right back with Community and Technology. Dave Burstein and Stu Reid.
Inspired by a poem written by Langston Hughes. I'm sure most of you have heard of Langston Hughes. And he wrote a poem about rivers. And we call this song, I've Known Rivers.
Rivers I have seen, and rivers I have known, ancient than the world, and older than the blood. I've known rivers, I've known rivers, all through Africa and North America, South America and Australia. I've known rivers, I've known rivers. I've known rivers in the north and the south. I've known rivers in the east and the west. I've known rivers all over this world. I've sailed some and seen the rest. I've known rivers, I've known rivers, I've known rivers, ancient dusty rivers, and my soul has grown deep like the rivers, the rivers, the rivers, like the rivers I have seen and rivers I have known, ancient than the world and older than the blood. I've known rivers, I've known rivers, all through Africa and the north of America, in South America and Australia. I've known rivers, I've known rivers. I've known rivers in the north and the south. I've known rivers in the east and the west. I've known rivers all over this world. I've sailed some and seen the rest. I've known rivers, I've known rivers, I've known rivers, ancient dusty rivers, and my soul has grown deep like the rivers, the rivers, the rivers, like the
That was Gary Bartz with his classic rendition of I've Known Rivers. This is Community and Technology on WHCR 90.3 with Stu Reid and Dave Burstein. Before the break, we were talking a little bit about what's going on with the government attempts to kind of right some things with the economy and with broadband, the recent appointment of the new chairman, Jessica Rosenworcel at the FCC, and the CHIPS Act, a $52 billion recently approved act to help support the chip industry, which Dave's take is it's probably just going to go in the bottom line as opposed to real action. But Dave, I wanted to kind of segue a little bit, if we could. You sent me something about the 16th Internet Governance Forum. They're going to be talking about hate speech. And I know this is something that we've talked about a lot on Community and Technology, particularly over the last 4 years or so with that guy we had in the White House previously, where things just kind of went to a whole new level of hate speech on the internet, if you will, on so many different social media platforms. And I just wanted to read a brief statement about what this forum is about, and then get your take. Guaranteeing the freedom of speech online while curbing hate speech, disinformation, and cybercrime is one of the toughest balancing acts facing the global internet governance community. And that's what these folks are going to be talking about. I know we've talked about this before, Dave, and before we went on air, you said that your views have evolved somewhat on hate speech governance on the internet. Where are you today?
I don't know where I am today. I don't know what my views are. Ask me 5 years ago, and I would have said First Amendment, absolutely. If something is said that's offensive, you correct it. The answer to offensive speech is more speech. Now, I'm watching horrible things happening around the world that leave me and anybody sensible worried. The folks who are at the IGF, which is a farce of a talk event with 250 sessions in 3 days, all of which are streamed worldwide and you can watch, and at least 1 in 10 is worth watching. At least one speaker in 1 in 10. People like Vince Cerf are there and good. On this, one of the speakers is, here we are, Marina Kaljarand, the former foreign minister of Estonia and a member of the European Parliament. Her opinion: current measures against disinformation and hate speech are insufficient to counter the assault on our democracy. The ultimate price of allowing disinformation and hatred to spread online unchecked is clear to all of us. On the other hand, and this is where I'm usually coming from, Julian York of the the Electronic Frontier Foundation, that's the name I was struggling for, points out it's not difficult to see how ratcheting up platform liability could cause even more vital speech to be removed by corporations whose sole interest is not in connecting the world, but in profiting from it. And I can tell you, having looked at it, the impact of any hate speech legislation that has any teeth is going to be extreme, because the companies who control the internet, and remember, 80% of what you do on the internet goes through just a handful of companies. Andrew Sullivan of the Internet Society talked about an internet dominated by fewer than 20 companies, are not going to stick their neck out, by and large, for freedom of speech, which means anything that anybody might object to, whether it be Trump, Biden, the Prime Minister of Canada, or political people and religious people in many other countries, they're just going to wipe right out.
Yeah. Yeah, Dave, one of the concerns I have as a Black American is, I've heard and I know friends that have been censored on Facebook and YouTube platforms because of their advocacy of Black civil rights. And if you talk about that too vociferously and with too robustly, somehow their algorithms see that as negative and as hate speech. And just to your point, that these giant companies are not going to use a nuanced approach as they look for so-called hate speech. They're going to like anything that is not vanilla is going to be wiped out. That's at least my fear, my paranoia. Is that your take?
I think that's absolutely the way it's going to play.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, Facebook has come out for more censorship of the internet and changes in Section 230. They're actually buying ads in my Washington publications
Mm-hmm.
on how the internet rules need to be changed.
Mm-hmm.
This is a big change. It will have a heavy price. Is it worth it? Well, what if you happen to be a Rohingya Muslim who has been thrown out of his country, where his people have lived for 200 years, Myanmar, who we used to call Burma, and may have a cousin who was killed in the violent purges of Muslims there. Did you see the lawsuit,
No, I did not.
Stu?
I missed that one, Dave. What is it?
Using 4 American law firms, a group of Rohingyas sued Facebook for $150 billion this week.
Whoa, nice number.
Because there is undoubtedly been many, many calls for violence against Muslims in Myanmar that went over Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
The backup on this is not just the lawsuit. The New York Times 2 years ago went there and found horrifying, hateful speech. And what's more to the point is their speech resulted in people dying. There are hundreds of thousands, at least, of refugees who have left the country and are living in horrible camps on the other side of the border in Bangladesh.
Mm.
Now, the Myanmar, or the Burmese, in fact, there were Burmese among them, led them, have been killing Muslims for at least 100 years. Before Mark Zuckerberg's grandfather was born, probably. So that's not the only cause. But does it contribute? I'm sure it does. So I don't know what the right thing to do here is, but I'm definitely open to hearing arguments on why things that create hate do not make sense.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dave. I'm concerned about the overreaction. I know, just to have a personal story, my wife has a 501c3 in New Rochelle, or our home, where she advocates for the history of the Black community in New Rochelle that has historically been discriminated against and had all kinds of negative things happen over the last 50 years or so. So her conservancy advocates for change, advocates to tell this story, to tell this history. And just recently, within the last week, her Facebook page was taken down by Facebook without any explanation other than somehow it violated their terms of service. And
which we should remind people is utter nonsense, because the terms of service are also so imprecise, nobody can figure out what they cover.
Yeah, but what my point is that the Facebook page simply advocated for telling the truth about the history of Black folks over the last 50 years in New Rochelle. And that's what the Facebook page is all about. And somehow that rose to the level of being taken down by Facebook. So when you have things like telling the truth about history, laying out the real deal about what went down as opposed to the fake history, when that is something that it gets removed from the internet because of so-called hate speech algorithms, we got a big problem.
And that's, we know, is the way it's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere on your wife's website, she had somebody saying, we must change this by whatever means necessary. Whatever means necessary is a term that people associate with Malcolm X, who chose not to be nonviolent or question nonviolence. And that may very well be something that Facebook put into their algorithms.
Yeah, I don't believe that anyone said that on her site, but nevertheless, that was certainly implied that, you know, things need to change and things need to happen. The any means necessary. I think that's reading. Certainly, that was a Malcolm quote, and one I don't disagree with necessarily. But no, she was not that strident, nor were the people that are on her site or were on her site that strident with their advocacy. But it doesn't take but somebody to write, to complain to Facebook that they were offended, that somebody crossed the line, and boom, there it is. And you don't have recourse. That's the crazy thing. There's no one to call. There's nobody to talk to. There apparently is an appeal process, but there's zero transparency as to how that happens.
So that's the problem with censorship, or a problem with censorship. On the other hand, people are hurt by words. I'm sure nobody has a number on how many teenage girls have committed suicide because people are looking at them and making fun of their bodies on Facebook or Instagram. Mm-hmm. It's definitely not zero, and it may be much higher.
Yeah. Not to mention all the bullying that has happened on Facebook and resulted in the same outcomes.
So neither of us have answers on that.
Yeah.
But since we're talking about history, and Black history in particular, let me go to something that, well, I don't have much time, so
yeah, we only got a minute or so, Dave. So
okay, a remarkable book by Elia Dorn Johnson. Elia rhymes with papaya, she says on her website. Trouble the Saints is a brilliantly written, fantastical story set in New York of the 1930s and 40s. Black entertainers, white gangsters, crooked mayors, all the things you would want. But the reason I thought of it while you were saying this is that she makes a point of talking about the history of discrimination here in New York and in the North. It never was just something in the South. They're talking about changing the name of Van Nostrand Avenue because Van Nostrand happened to own 6 slaves, according to a census. These are things that have been with us, of course, in some ways are still with us. And it's a brilliant novel, Elia Dorn Johnson, Trouble the Saints. Yeah. Not easy to read, some of it's rough, but brilliantly written.
Okay, well, this is an issue that is not going away. We've talked about it before, and we will certainly be talking about it again. Regulating hate speech on the internet, and should that be done, and how do you do it without throwing the baby out with the wash? Okay, Dave, so thanks. It's been a lively conversation once again. Okay, this has been Community and Technology on WHCR 90.3, the voice of Harlem. Don't forget to send in your contribution, if you will, to WHCR Radio/City College, 160 Convent Avenue, NAC Building, 1/513, New York, 10031. And please write community and technology in the memo line. We certainly appreciate your support. Stay tuned for more news and information on WHCR, the voice of Harlem. Thanks for tuning in. Good night.